Hi, this is Jen Maleka, the Holistic Health Boss, your functional diagnostic health coach and personal training expert, and I'm talking to you guys this week about whether or not gluten sensitivity is real, because there's so much more talk that's going on about gluten these days, and gluten-free products are starting to inundate and overtake the grocery store shelves. There's even like popular cereal brands that you see all the time that are spending money on commercial marketing about how their products are gluten-free, and it's basically surrounding all of us. Yet people are still questioning whether gluten sensitivity is a real thing. So this week I'm here to put all of the myths to rest, because there's actually new research out that's going to tell us the truth about gluten sensitivity. But before we dive into that, I just want to make clear about the difference between celiac disorder or disease and then what gluten sensitivity is, if you guys aren't familiar with that, because they're very different, and not everybody is going to have a celiac reaction to gluten, but you can have a gluten sensitivity if you're not celiac. So somebody who has celiac means that they have a genetic disorder or the gene that causes their body to basically go at war with itself, and gluten is one of the things that triggers that to happen. So anybody who has celiac disease, they would have a pretty violent reaction to gluten itself. Like they would get really ill or sick if they eat gluten, and even they're so sensitive to it to the fact that if a piece of bread were to touch the same plate that they were to eat off of, that can even make them sick. So celiac is way different. There's a smaller portion of the population out there that has that genetic type of disorder, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have a gluten sensitivity if you don't have the gene. So a gluten sensitivity means that you have a more mild reaction to gluten usually. You can think of it kind of, although it's not exactly the same, but you can think of it like having an allergy to gluten, but it's one that you would never get rid of. So some of the signs of having a gluten sensitivity, or some of the symptoms of it, would include things like anxiety, depression, joint aches and pains or muscle aches and pains. Also things like congestion, inflammation, bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation, brain fog, ADD, ADHD. If you're on the spectrum for autism, or even autistic, or actually diagnosed with autism specifically, fatigue, or just having trouble with balancing your energy. Also, stomach aches and pains. Let's see, am I missing anything? Autoimmune disorders will go along with gluten sensitivities also. So things like lupus or Crohn's or celiac or rheumatoid arthritis. So if you think of that list of symptoms that I just said, like how many of those things have you experienced at some point in time in your life, or you're currently experiencing now, right? And I'm sure nobody's really ever correlated that with gluten for you, because the idea of gluten sensitivity has not really hit our mainstream Western medicine yet, but it's becoming more of a topic of conversation, and we need doctors to start looking at diet and the correlation with gluten with some of these things. So let's talk about, what exactly is real in terms of gluten, having a gluten sensitivity, because what if eliminating one food out of your diet could change your whole life and make all of those symptoms go away? Wouldn't that be amazing, right? So one of the reasons why people will question whether or not gluten sensitivity is real is because wheat has been a staple in our diet for centuries, basically. However, what I want you guys to start thinking about is the fact that wheat does not look the same as it did years ago or ages ago, like when our grandparents were eating it. So with the industrialization, the genetic modification and chemicalization of our food as we now know it, it has actually changed wheat. It's changed the form of it. And this is why we're seeing more incidences related to gluten, and actually new diseases, or what we would call new diseases, that have really only come about at the turn of the 19th century that we didn't see before, is because of this change in our food system. So in fact, even in other countries, people don't react to wheat, or they don't have the same problems with wheat as we do in the US. And that's because in Europe, for example, they don't modify their food or industrialize it in the same kind of way that we do. Like I just actually spent 23 days in Europe, and I was able to eat pasta and bread and pizza just fine without the typical responses that I would have to, let's say, eating those things in the US. When I eat those things in the States, I instantly get anxiety. I break out with zits all over my face. And in Europe, I didn't experience any of that. Not to say that it doesn't still affect me in some kind of way, but just not as intensely as it does over here. So let's put all this to rest, whether or not gluten sensitivity is real. The fact is that the Columbia University Medical Center actually just performed a study on gluten sensitivity. And they had, I think, about exactly about 80 different participants. Some of them had already reported that they knew that they were sensitive to gluten. Some had reported no signs of that or didn't think that they were, and then they had some people that were celiacs. So when they did this this study, what they found is that all of the participants from eating gluten, every single one of them, even the ones that didn't think that they had a gluten sensitivity, actually did. So what they were finding was that these people, all of them across the board, had leaky gut. So they basically had, from a scientific standpoint, an increase in intestinal permeability, which means that your gut is now allowing more toxins into the bloodstream than it should be. And all of these people had a systematic immune activation, indicating that they were having chronic inflammation in response to eating gluten. So regardless, what this means for you is that regardless of who you are, whether you're diagnosed with celiac or not, whether you know you have a gluten sensitivity or not, gluten is damaging to your system. The chronic inflammation that it creates becomes taxing on your body over time. It causes your immune system to tank. It creates or contributes to continued leaky gut, contributes to allergies, contributes to disease, and overall just wreaks havoc on your body. So, and I can attest to this personally. When I started living a gluten-free lifestyle, my anxiety went away, my joint aches and pains went away, my skin became more clear, and it was much easier to manage my weight. And I have my clients do the same thing, and they experience a lot of those same improvements, as well as many other things in relation to their health, like balancing hormones and getting rid of allergies and clearing up their thinking, being able to focus better, sleep better, all of that stuff. I mean, the list goes on and on once we remove gluten out of the diet. So what I want you guys to start thinking about is we need to start rethinking the way that we eat. And recognizing that the next time you go to reach for that slice of pizza or that bowl of pasta or that slice of bread, is you not only need to start thinking about what is that doing to your body internally, because the research doesn't lie. We know for certain that gluten, no matter who you are, is damaging to your body. It's wreaking havoc on it, and chronically over a long period of time, that can result in some really more serious health issues. So I would encourage you guys to explore this a little bit more. Eating gluten-free does not mean eating with deprivation. There's still a ton, like hundreds of different foods that you can enjoy. It doesn't mean being carb-free. You can still eat things like rice and risotto and gluten-free breads or gluten-free pastas if that's an easier transition for you. Potatoes of any kinds, those are a lot of the substitutes that I'll have my clients incorporate when we start to move gluten out of their diet, and they transition just fine over a period of time. And if you guys have questions or concerns about how gluten is affecting you, then I want to invite you to go ahead and schedule a complimentary consultation with me, an Ideal Health and Weight Discovery session. You can click on the links below or go back to the email where you found this video and go ahead and get that scheduled. It's a 45-minute session where we can talk one-on-one on how gluten might be affecting you and what would be a strategy to start transitioning it out of your lifestyle too. So I hope you guys found this helpful this week, and here's to living a gluten-free lifestyle. I will talk to you guys next Thursday.